intelligence agency. And then the Israel police is in charge of all of the outer spheres, and every place that this president will go to will be under the command of a Israel police officer, senior officer, who is in charge of every site. It's a huge operation. It takes months and months to prepare, and it begins now. This is the ultimate moment of months of planning by the Israel police, the Shin Bet, the Secret Service, all of the armored convoys that are going to be traveling through Jerusalem, causing temporary disruption. It's all been orchestrated and planned in advance, and now everybody's hoping that it's going to go smoothly and without any unusual incidents.
If you're just joining us now, this is breaking news. You are looking at live images on your screen. This is Air Force One touching down just moments ago in Tel Aviv as Joe Biden, the President of the United States, and his massive entourage arrive for this historic Middle East trip, starting in Israel, ending in Saudi Arabia. Daniel, I want to pick up on what we are going to see in the next hour. We know that speeches are going to be given. Obviously, President Joe Biden is set to speak. President Isaac Herzog is set to speak. And so is interim Prime Minister Yair Lapid. Important optics right now for both leaders on both sides.
Well, this is a more ceremonial part of every official state visit, with the red carpet and the receiving line, which, as far as I understood, is going to be very short at the demand of the American president's entourage. But then there will be speeches. I wouldn't expect any breaking news out of these speeches. They are more, expressions of friendliness, which is fine. I mean, this is just the beginning of the trip. There's no real substance. There might be a few references to the main issues that the two sides plan to discuss, but not beyond that. There will be a lot of smiles and hugs and shows of friendship. Again, as I said, there is an emotional part of receiving an American president here, and I bet every Israeli politician would love to be present there, but I think that the receiving line has been really very much shortened.
Kept to a minimum.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think there is something to be said for Biden's idea that the visit itself is the message. We often look for concrete policies and developments, and of course that's the most important thing. But you can't take away from what we've been talking about, which is this hug that the state of Israel is receiving from the Biden administration is always going to be important for the Israeli people. It's always going to have value.
It is always a message,
right,
to the region, to the world. The show of friendship between the two countries is an important aspect.
Talking of exactly that, let's dip in and watch this live ceremony at Ben Gurion Airport in Tel Aviv.
שמר יעבור לנוח. מות נוח.
אל רחבת הטקס נכנס ראש הממשלה החליפי מר נפתלי בנט. The alternate Prime Minister, Mr. Naftali Bennett.
שמר יעבור לדום. שמר דום. שמר יעבור לנוח. מות נוח.
are looking at live images on your screen. This is Air Force One touching down here in Israel just moments ago. We are watching a live ceremony as President Joe Biden and his entourage are welcomed here in Tel Aviv at the start of this historic trip to the Middle East. As you can see, the red carpet is out, the flags are up, and the guests are waiting. Let's watch. Still with me in studio, Daniel Sheck, former Israeli ambassador to France and political commentator, and Yaakov Lapin, military and strategic affairs analyst at the Jewish News Syndicate and the Miriam Institute. And Daniel, give us an idea of the protocols in place. We know we're going to hear some speeches likely to be very short. It's very hot in Tel Aviv on this day. Talk us through what is happening on the diplomatic protocol organizing side right now.
First of all, you should understand that this is the end of a process that might have taken weeks in preparation. The moment there is a report about a presidential visit somewhere, there is an important American delegation that goes to the destination and starts coordinating with the local authorities. This has been going on for weeks, I believe, between Israelis and Americans. It's not always easy to combine the habits of the hosts and the guests. The guest has the last word, obviously. We want the president to feel confident and comfortable. So now you will see the plane will stop and the gangway will be approached, and at the foot of the stairs will begin the red carpet. It's the head of protocol, who you see here on the right, Gil Haskel, who will be the first one to welcome the president. He will go up the stairs and he will receive him at the top, at the entrance to the plane, and he will escort him down and will introduce him to his hosts, President Herzog, Prime Minister Lapid, and Naftali Bennett.
Certainly a very big moment for Yair Lapid, the interim prime minister, as they make their way along that red carpet. Yaakov.
Yes, it's quite a splash for him to go from, an immediate caretaker prime minister to somebody who's receiving the leader of the free world. It's obviously a big moment for him personally, professionally. Will he be able to...
And politically.
Well, I was about to say he may be attempting to leverage this forward. And why wouldn't he? I mean, anybody in his position would. But again, we have to remember that this does come at an awkward time. We cannot ignore the fact that Israel is in political chaos, it's in political paralysis, and therefore there's a limit to what this government can deliver in terms of gestures towards the Palestinians and the types of things that the Biden administration would want to see ahead of a visit like this.
We also have to say that he didn't plan it that way. I mean, he would have preferred to keep the majority in the Knesset and be the
foreign minister.
Yeah, be the foreign minister receiving, but that's the way it went. And he doesn't really have to make an effort to leverage this. The images is all he needs. He needs to use this event, and a couple of weeks earlier, his visit to Paris, to show statesmanship, to show his ability to be a statesman, to have the gravitas of a leader, of a prime minister. That's all he needs from this.
He certainly got a very warm embrace from the French president Emmanuel Macron when he was in Paris.
Between them that helped a lot.
Absolutely.
That helped a lot. This is going to be a little bit different, but this is the American president, and he will have these images will accompany him in his first weeks as prime minister.
And we've also had reports in the past 24 hours of internal political pressure and possibly the beginning of campaigning here on issues that are related to this visit. A delay of planned building of Jewish areas in East Jerusalem, and an reported approval for the construction of Palestinian buildings in Area C of the West Bank by Defense Minister Benny Gantz, and a vow by Ayelet Shaked to combat those measures. So we are already seeing those internal political pressures coming to the fore because of steps that seem to be linked to this visit.
It's seen as some kind of goodwill gesture for the Palestinians ahead of this trip. What are the expectations, Daniel, in your mind, out of the West Bank and East Jerusalem when they see the U.S. president about to land right now and get out of Air Force One, meet with Israeli leaders on the tarmac?
Probably pretty low. They would have loved to have such a visit at a moment where they could, expect a relaunch of real negotiations about the two-state solution. But just as you said, this is completely inconceivable, both from the Israeli side and the Palestinian side. No, it's not yet the president, hopefully.
Yeah. We want to carefully walk down these stairs, very carefully.
The Palestinian Authority is also in political chaos. Mahmoud Abbas, the president, we don't know how much longer he's going to be president. Already the succession battle to see who will replace him is underway. Fatah is fractured. Hamas is chipping away and eroding at Fatah's position in the West Bank as ruler. So both sides are basically politically paralyzed coming into this visit.
It certainly is something we're going to unpack in the coming hours. Right now, let's watch as the U.S. President Joe Biden and his entourage get off of Air Force One, coming down those stairs. The red carpet is out, and you can see the Israeli leadership contingent waiting at the bottom to welcome President Joe Biden. Let's watch.
משמר יעבור לדום, משמר דום, משמר יעבור לנוח, מות נוח.
These are live images out of Tel Aviv. Ben Gurion Airport, you are looking at Air Force One. It landed just moments ago. This is the red carpet welcome from Israeli leaders as we wait for the President of the United States, Joe Biden, to come out of Air Force One and walk down those stairs. Waiting for him on the tarmac, President Isaac Herzog. Interim Prime Minister Yair Lapid and alternate Prime Minister Naftali Bennett. When they arrive, we are expecting to hear short speeches from the leaders of Israel and of the United States.
משמר יעבור לדום, משמר דום. משמר יעבור לנוח, מות נוח.
Waiting on the tarmac, Israeli President Isaac Herzog, Israeli Interim Prime Minister Yair Lapid, and interestingly enough, alternate Prime Minister as well, Naftali Bennett. He, of course, would have been the Prime Minister ahead of plans for this trip. Right now, both those Prime Ministers are waiting at the bottom of those stairs next to Air Force One, ready to welcome U.S. President Joe Biden to Israel. U.S. President Joe Biden is set to come out of Air Force One in the coming moments. Waiting for him on the tarmac are the Israeli leaders. We've been discussing it in studio right now, and joining the welcoming committee, Daniel Sheck, is Ambassador.
Yes, of course.
Tell us more.
Well, obviously, the ambassador of the esteemed guest is in at the top of, or close to the top of the receiving line. He wasn't there earlier, so he just came around. But the first guest to receive, the first person to receive the guest is the head of state. It's Isaac Herzog, President Herzog, and only after that the political leadership.
Yaakov, we've been talking about the security measures in place for a moment like this. Obviously, the U.S. has its team, Israel has its team. Talk to us about what they are doing right now, waiting for the U.S. president to disembark.
Well, the security operation, which the police call Blue Shield 3, has already begun. And the best way to look at it is really through circles. There's an inner circle, which is run by the Secret Service, and they're in charge of, the president's innermost circle. And right outside of that is the Shin Bet. I think that we're seeing some movement here.
Here he is.
There he is, the President of the United States, putting on his sunglasses. He'll need it in Tel Aviv as he comes down the stairs of Air Force One. Let's watch.
President of the State of Israel. Prime Minister Lapid. Heard of this guy. Yes.
יעבור לדום, משמר דום. שמר יעבור לנוח, נוח, נוח.
You know this gentleman, I guess.
The welcoming committee on the tarmac in Tel Aviv, Israeli leaders welcoming the President of the United States, Joe Biden. You might have noticed some fist pumps instead of handshakes. Well, that was an alert that came through before this trip that the U.S. President was not keen to be shaking hands with leaders when he got here. That's over COVID concerns. Interesting to see a couple of taps, light hugs. Let's break it down. Daniel Sheck, this is an important moment on the red carpet from a diplomatic point of view.
Yes, from a ceremonial point of view. Diplomacy is more than just ceremonies, but it's an important moment because the images are projected worldwide. I forgot to mention among the welcoming party also the Israeli ambassador to Washington, Mike Herzog. You know, you have two Herzogs on the receiving line.
High-profile Herzog.
Just to remind our viewers that Mike Herzog is the brother of Isaac Herzog, the Israeli president. And here there are a few more personalities, Army Chief of Staff, and a few more people who will welcome him. And then there will probably be playing the national hymn, national anthems, and he will review a Guard of Honor of Tzahal.
You can see the smile. Certainly looks like warm interaction so far, Yaakov.
Yeah, and you know, this is reflective of the fact that as far as Israel is concerned, it has no greater and more important strategic ally than the United States. That's not going to change, and that's been the case for many years. And of course, even though Israel is the junior partner in this alliance, it has a great deal to offer the United States on many, many levels. So when it comes to, you know, intelligence sharing and promoting American interests in the Middle East and beating back Iranian interests and Iranian actions that are destabilizing this region, the United States still views Israel and continues to view Israel as a fundamental pillar in stabilizing the Middle East. So, of course, in addition to all of that, we have warm personal relations between these leaders, and when you put all of that together, you see these, you know, genuinely warm attempt at handshake, fist bumps, and greetings at the airport. And of course, they have a lot to talk about in the next 48 hours.
Certainly they do. Let's watch the ceremony live from Ben Gurion Airport.
יחטיף את נשקו. חטף, צ'ק.
Mike Herzog might have trouble.
The Israeli anthems, the U.S. anthem at the start of the official welcome for President Joe Biden to Israel.
אדוני, Mr. President.
To review the Guard of Honor.
President Joe Biden walking to go and review the Guard of Honor on his one side, President Isaac Herzog on his other, Interim Prime Minister Yair Lapid. Daniel, talk us through what is happening now, the Guard of Honor.
Well, this is a traditional part of a state visit. The local armed forces honor the guest, and it's sort of a symbolic walk by them to the sound of the marching band, and then I suspect we will hear the two speeches, brief speeches, statements, which, as I said earlier, will be mostly, tokens of friendship, maybe speaking a little bit about what the issues will be that will be discussed, but I don't think that there will be any surprising substance in them.
כבר יציג את נשקו. צא, צ'ק. שמר יעבור לנוח, מות נוח.
דבר כבוד נשיא מדינת ישראל, מר יצחק הרצוג. The President of the State of Israel, Isaac Herzog, will deliver his welcoming remarks.
Mr. President, welcome to Israel, our brother Joseph. Baruch haba liYisrael, achinu Yosef. The people of Israel welcome you to the Holy Land with open arms and joyous hearts, as Joseph, son of Jacob, who sought out his brothers. Here, Mr. President, you are truly amongst family. Like the biblical Joseph, you are both a visionary and a leader, committed to advancing the United States of America, the Middle East, the world at large, and the state of Israel. This historic visit reflects the deep partnership our nations share, a partnership rooted in our shared commitment to democracy, justice and freedom, tolerance, security, and peace. The state of Israel, in which you have just arrived, is a successful, innovative nation which contributes to Tikkun Olam, healing the world, through science and medicine, water and food technology, climate innovation, and so much more. Mr. President, you have been a true friend, Yedid Emet, and staunch supporter of Israel and the Jewish people, of our security and well-being, your entire life. In this visit, you will discuss the security challenges emanating directly from Iran and its proxies, threatening Israel and its neighbors and endangering our region. Your first trip here in 1973 was just a few weeks before a terrible war broke out. Today, winds of peace are blowing from North Africa across the Mediterranean to the Gulf. This trip, Mr. President, is your journey of peace from Israel to Saudi Arabia, from the Holy Land to the Hijaz. I hope and pray it will help advance a regional vision of prosperity, integration, peace and security for our entire region. So, dear friend, Baruch haba, welcome to Israel and welcome home.
שמר יעבור לדום, משמר דום. שמר יעבור לנוח, מות נוח.
דבר ראש ממשלת ישראל, מר יאיר לפיד. The Prime Minister of Israel, Yair Lapid, will deliver his welcoming remarks.
Mr. President, this is both a historic visit and a deeply personal one. It is historic because it expresses the unbreakable bond between our countries, our commitment to shared values, democracy, freedom, and the right of the Jewish people to a state of their own. And it is a very personal visit because your relationship with Israel has always been very personal. You once defined yourself as a Zionist. You said that you don't have to be a Jew in order to be a Zionist. And you were right. And in your case, a great Zionist and one of the best friends Israel has ever known. You have not been here for a few years, so in the next couple of days, you will see how Israel has grown and developed. You will see the strength and smartness of the Israeli army, the creativity of the startup nation, the diversity of the Israeli society. Israel is a country that brings together the past, the present, and the future. Just moments ago, your plane, Air Force One, flew over where King Saul searched for his father's donkeys, above King David's rooftop, above the palm tree that Deborah, the prophet, sat under. You also flew over a world-leading high-tech industry, over agriculture that is helping improve food security around the globe, above universities and research institutes where Israeli scientists, including Nobel Prize winners, are leading groundbreaking research. During your visit, we will discuss matters of national security. We will discuss building a new security and economy architecture with the nations of the Middle East, following the Abraham Accords and the achievements of the Negev Summit. And we will discuss the need to renew a strong global coalition that will stop the Iranian nuclear program. There will be time for all of that. Right now, we are simply happy to see you, Mr. President. The simple, genuine joy brought by seeing a good friend once again. Mr. President, Baruch haba, welcome to Israel.
משמר יעבור לדום, משמר דום. משמר יעבור לנוח, מות נוח.
גבירותיי ורבותיי, אני מתכבד להזמין את אורחנו המכובד, נשיא ארצות הברית, מר ג'וזף R. ביידן ג'וניור. Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Joseph R. Biden Jr., the President of the United States of America.
President Herzog, Mr. Prime Minister Lapid, it's an honor to once again stand with friends and visit the independent Jewish state of Israel. President Nixon was the first American president to visit Israel in 1974. My first visit was, as you mentioned, as a young United States Senator from Delaware in 1973, just a few weeks before the Yom Kippur War. I had the privilege of spending time with Prime Minister Golda Meir. I'll never forget, I was sitting next to a gentleman on my right when there were aides. His name was Rabin. I look back on it all now, and I realized that I had the great honor of living part of the great history of this great, and I did say, and I say again, you need not be a Jew to be a Zionist. The fact is that since then I've known every single prime minister, and it's been an honor. Formed strong working relations with each of them. And now, this is my 10th visit. Every chance to return to this great country, where the ancient roots of the Jewish people date back to biblical times, is a blessing. Because the connection between the Israeli people and the American people is bone deep. It's bone deep. Generation after generation, that connection grows. We invest in each other. We dream together. We're part of what has always been the objective we both had. I've been part of that as a senator, as a vice president, and quite frankly, before that, having been raised by a righteous Christian who we had dinner at our table every night before he went back to work. And it was a place where we had conversation and incidentally ate. And I remember he taught us all about what happened in the Holocaust. Why weren't the tracks bombed? Why did we not? Why? And he imbued in us a sense of obligation that we all have. And now as president, I'm proud to say that our relationship with the State of Israel is deeper and stronger, in my view, than it's ever been. And with this visit, we're strengthening our connections even further. We have reaffirmed the unshakable commitment of the United States to Israel's security, including partnering with Israel on the most cutting-edge defense systems in the world. From here, I'm going straight to a briefing on Israeli missiles and rocket defense capabilities, including the U.S. support for the Iron Dome and Israel's new laser-enabled system called the Iron Beam. We're going to deepen our connections in science and innovation and work to address global challenges through the new strategic high-level dialogue on technology. We'll continue to advance Israel's integration into the region, expand emerging forums and engagement like the new I2U2 summit, which will bring Israel, the United States, the UAE together, and India as well, to deepen our economic cooperation between the Middle East and the Indo-Pacific. Greater peace, greater stability, greater connection. It's critical, if I might add, for all the people of the region, which is why we'll discuss my continued support, even though I know it's not in the near term, a two-state solution. That remains, in my view, the best way to ensure the future of equal measure of freedom, prosperity, and democracy for Israelis and Palestinians alike. We're going to celebrate the ending of people-to-people connection and the enduring connection that binds our nations together, commemorate the history that we must never allow to repeat itself. Later today, I will once more return to the hallowed ground of Yad Vashem to honor 6 million Jewish lives were stolen in the genocide, and continue, which we must do every day, continue to bear witness. To keep alive the truth and honor of the Holocaust, horror of the Holocaust, honor those we lost so that we never, ever forget that lesson. And to continue our shared, unending work to fight the poison of anti-Semitism wherever it rises its ugly head. Wherever we find it in the world, we make real on the promise of never again by taking it on. We have a full agenda over the next 2 days because the relationship between Israel and the United States covers every issue that matters to our mutual futures. We're united in our shared values and our shared vision. I'm looking forward to our time together over the next few days. May Israel and the United States continue to grow and prosper together for the benefit of the entire world. And I mean that, for the benefit of the entire world. Thank you, and God bless you all.
משמר יעבור לדום, משמר דום. משמר יעבור לנוח, מות נוח.
נשיא המדינה, ראש הממשלה ונשיא ארצות הברית הצטרפו עתה לבימת המוזמנים לצילום קבוצתי חגיגי. The President of the State of Israel, the Prime Minister, and the President of the United States will now join the honorable guest for a celebratory photo.
President Joe Biden Prime Minister Yair Lapid and President Isaac Herzog all delivering remarks on the red carpet at Ben Gurion Airport, marking the start of this historic trip. The U.S. leader here in the Middle East, in Israel, for the next 2 days. He will also be visiting the West Bank, and then on Friday he heads to Saudi Arabia. A photograph is being taken right now on the tarmac at the start of this historic trip. Let's find out what is happening at the airport. We bring in our Middle East correspondent, Ariel Osaran. So, Ariel, that red carpet has been out, and Air Force One landed early, which was interesting. Talk to us about the messaging, warm messages between these leaders at the start of this important time for the region, this important visit.
Oh, definitely, Benita. So as President Biden just finished taking his joint photo with Israeli ministers and members of parliament, rather than going one by one, shaking their hands, we did hear Israeli leaders, both Prime Minister Lapid and President Herzog, talk about the unbreakable bond between Israel and the United States. President Herzog calling President Biden our brother Joseph, referring to the biblical Joseph. And I think what was interesting, what we heard from President Biden, was that he reiterated the importance of his deep belief, as he called it, in the two-state solution. I think this will be the peak of mentioning that and the conflict with the Palestinians during this short visit here to the region. And as we are looking now, President Biden appears to be walking to his car, the Beast, his armored vehicle, which will take him, as he described it, to the hallowed ground of Yad Vashem, the Holocaust Memorial Site, a site that world dignitaries, world leaders make a point of stopping as they arrive in Israel. And President Biden, in his remarks, mentioned the importance of remembering the Holocaust, of never again. This is a constant talking point of his, but we saw a warm atmosphere between him, Prime Minister Lapid, President Herzog, a warm atmosphere that, at least in Israel, hope will continue into tomorrow as the working meetings begin.
Ariel, obviously security is top of mind for Israeli leaders, and of course the relationship that exists between Israel and the United States. The U.S. President making mention of the fact that he is going to be going shortly to be shown the Iron Dome and the Iron Beam. Talk to us about why that is so important at the start of this visit.
You're absolutely right, Benita. Before he goes to Yad Vashem, he will, here at the airport, be shown an exhibition of Israeli cutting-edge air defense systems. Now, this comes as part of the larger context of President Biden's visit. Of course, after Israel and Bethlehem, he will go on to the regional security regional conference in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. And ahead of this visit, there was a lot of talk about establishing some form of regional security alliance, mainly in the fields of air defense. And that air defense alliance is going to be based mainly on Israeli air defense technology. So what President Biden is going to see right now is the technology that regional alliance will be based on. We've also heard reports that not only Israel is intended to send or to sell arms systems to Gulf partners, some with whom Israel does not have official relations, including Saudi Arabia. It wouldn't be surprising if these same systems that he is taking a glance at during this exhibition will be in play in some form of regional security cooperation that is expected to be announced in some form or another between Israel and Gulf partners, also partners with whom Israel does not have official diplomatic relations at the moment.
Well, as President Isaac Herzog said, the winds of peace are blowing from North Africa across the Gulf. We're just seeing images of the president getting into the Beast. You have been there at the airport in the lead up to this moment, touchdown of Air Force One. Talk to us about the atmosphere there. It certainly looks warm and positive from our vantage point.
Warm and positive in atmosphere, and warm and humid in terms of the temperature. Leading up to the landing, pretty much until half an hour before the event began, all the dignitaries were in their respective tents. There was a tent for the military servicemen who are playing the band behind me. On the other, behind my other shoulder are the Israeli dignitaries, politicians. They had their own tents, people hiding in the air conditioning. But yes, there was a lot of excitement also here among the press. A very, very large presence of foreign press here to cover this trip, all the way from Australia, Japan, US, Europe, also India. There's a lot of people here coming to cover this, because this is seen as an important moment, not just in the chronicles of the relations between Israel and the U.S., but more broadly in the region, because this visit is seen as a significant, perhaps step forward in including Israel in the larger Gulf Middle East area.
Ariel, we've been discussing here in studio that the opening remarks at a trip like this are likely to not getting too much detail or knuckling down into too many contentious issues, but Interim Prime Minister Yair Lapid made brief mention of the Iran nuclear program and efforts to try and stop it. Talk to us about the national security concerns right now out of Israel at the start of this trip. A lot will be discussed behind the scenes, but this will be top of mind for Israel.
Well, Benita, I think out of all the issues that are going to be discussed during this trip, the Iran issue, mainly the Iran nuclear threat, is perhaps the least contentious of the issues between Israel and the U.S. Ahead of this visit, there was we learned that the two leaders, Lapid and President Biden, are going to sign what's called the Jerusalem Declaration, a declaration that hopes to solidify key policy points by U.S. in relation to Israel's national security interests, mainly not allowing Iran to acquire nuclear weapons, also the promise to allow, or the positive perspective on Israel being able to defend itself by itself. These are issues that have been policy for both sides and also statements for years, but this is going to be in writing. Look, no one should be surprised. There is not going to be any surprises here in this visit. Perhaps the most contentious issue was actually raised by U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan on a briefing mid-air on Air Force One, saying that that the U.S. does intend in the near future to reopen the U.S. consulate for the Palestinians in Jerusalem. And so that will be discussed in closed doors, but in open public remarks, of course, friendship all around.
Middle East correspondent Ariel Osaran, live from Ben Gurion Airport in Tel Aviv. Ariel, thank you. We will be coming back to you throughout our broadcast. Now with me in studio, we have said goodbye to former Ambassador Daniel Sheck, political commentator. Thank you, Daniel, for being with us for the last hour. Now we welcome to studio Dan Perry, international affairs analyst and former Middle East editor at the Associated Press. And still with us, Yaakov Lapin, military and strategic affairs analyst at the Jewish News Syndicate and the Miriam Institute. Thank you both for being here. Dan, I want to start with you. Good to see you here in studio. We've been watching these images, Air Force One touching down in Tel Aviv early. We have heard the opening remarks from the leaders as we watch now the US president getting into the beast. He's about to go off and be shown some of the top defense technology that exists here in Israel. Talk to us from your perspective. You've been covering this region for a very long time, about the significance of this trip and what we are seeing unfolding